Have you ever been looked down on just because of your job? Like, truly dismissed, as if your worth as a human being was tied to your paycheck or the dirt under your fingernails. That's exactly what happened in the story I'm about to share with you, or rather, to the man at the heart of it. My name is Ruby, and if you've been with me here on the channel, you know I love a good story about overcoming the odds, about karma, and sometimes about a little sweet, unexpected revenge. This is one of those stories. It's a tale of humiliation, relentless hard work, incredible success, and a moment when the tables turned in a way no one saw coming. Let me take you back to a wedding day. Not mine, but his. The groom stood there, maybe a little nervous, but mostly beaming, proud to marry the woman he loved more than anything. He wore a suit that was clean, maybe a little worn around the edges, but it was his best, and he wore it with dignity. But her family? Oh, her family. They weren't looking at a loving partner, a good man with a kind heart and a bright future. No, they saw one thing, and one thing only, a plumber. And to them, in their world of manicured lawns and corner offices, that meant low class. It meant disposable. It meant a future filled with scraping by, with never quite measuring up. They saw a man destined for failure. They just didn't know. They couldn't see past the wrench in his hand, past the smudges of honest work. They didn't know they were looking at a future millionaire. Jason was never ashamed of being a plumber. Why would he be? He'd built his business from the ground up. No silver spoon, no trust fund, no fancy college degree handed to him on a platter. Just sheer grit, sweat, and determination. His office was an old pickup truck, the kind with a few dents and faded paint, tools rattling in the back, and dreams riding shotgun right beside him. Big dreams. He met Sarah in college, actually. She was studying something he never quite understood, all abstract concepts and theoretical frameworks. He was working construction to pay his way, fixing leaky faucets in rented houses on the weekends. They were an unlikely pair, maybe, but their connection was undeniable. Sarah saw Jason, the real Jason, the smart, funny, incredibly driven man he was. So when they decided to get married, it felt right. It felt like the start of everything. But on the day they were supposed to be celebrating their love, surrounded by family and friends, the whisper started. Sarah's mother, Judith, was a woman who measured success in designer handbags and the square footage of your house. As Jason and Sarah exchanged vows, promising forever, Judith leaned over to her sister, Agnes, and murmured, her voice dripping with disdain. A plumber? That's the best she could do? Honestly, Agnes, I don't know what Sarah sees in him. Lord help them. The words, though meant for her sister, carried in the quiet hall, sharp and clear. Jason heard. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach, but he held Sarah's hands tighter and focused on her eyes. Today was about them. Later, at the reception, the passive aggression continued, thinly veiled with forced smiles and polite laughter. Sarah's older brother, Brad, a man whose entire personality seemed to revolve around his mid-level insurance broker job, stood up to give a toast. He clinked his champagne flute, a smug look on his face. Well, Brad began, his voice booming slightly, I guess it's good to know that if the toilet ever breaks at Thanksgiving dinner, we've got someone in the family who can handle it now. A ripple of awkward laughter spread through the room. It wasn't genuine amusement. It was the uncomfortable sound of people unsure how to react to a blatant insult disguised as a joke. Jason smiled, a tight, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. It hurt. It hurt more than he expected. This wasn't just about him. It was about the woman he loved, who had to hear her family belittle the man she chose. Later that night, away from the crowd, Sarah held him close. Don't listen to them, she whispered into his chest. They're just like that. They'll come around. Jason wanted to believe her. He really did. But as he held her, listening to the fading music from the reception, a cold certainty settled in his gut. They wouldn't come around. Not easily, anyway. And that night, something shifted within him. The hurt didn't just sting, it started to solidify, to form a hard, determined core. He wouldn't just be Sarah's husband, he would be a man her family couldn't ignore, couldn't dismiss. The first few years of their marriage were a blur of hard work for Jason. He was building his business, one pipe, one client, one emergency call at 3 a.m. at a time. He worked Saturdays, Sundays, holidays. He never cut corners, even when it would have been easier. His reputation grew, a plumber who was reliable, honest, and actually showed up when he said he would. Meanwhile, every Sunday dinner at Sarah's parents' house felt less like a family gathering and more like a performance review where Jason was constantly failing. "Still doing that plumbing thing?" Judith would ask, her tone suggesting it was some kind of temporary, slightly embarrassing hobby. "Ever think about going back to school, Jason?" Brad would chime in, swirling his wine glass. "Maybe get a real job? Something with, prospects." The implication was clear. Plumbing had no prospects. Jason had no prospects. Jason would just smile, a tight smile that was becoming a little more practiced with each passing week. Sarah would try to change the subject, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Judith had a particular talent for making Jason feel unwelcome, especially if he came straight from a job. If he arrived in his work clothes, clean but carrying the faint, telltale scent of drains or damp basements, she would visibly wrinkle her nose, as if he'd tracked sewage across her pristine Persian rug. "Honestly, Jason," she'd say, fanning a hand in front of her face, "couldn't you at least change before coming to dinner?" Brad, ever the supportive brother-in-law, loved to bring up his own financial success. "I make more in 1/4 than you probably do in a year, man," he'd boast, leaning back in his chair, oblivious to the quiet tension he was creating. Jason never rose to the bait. He never argued, never defended his profession, never pointed out that someone had to do the work Brad seemed to find so beneath him. He just smiled and listened and tucked away each condescending comment, each thinly veiled insult. But inside, the quiet man they dismissed as just a plumber wasn't just smiling and taking it. Inside, a storm was brewing. A quiet, powerful storm of ambition and a fierce, burning desire to prove them all spectacularly wrong. He wasn't just working to build a comfortable life for him and Sarah, he was working with a new kind of fuel, the potent, slow-burning fuel of being underestimated. Every early morning, every late night, every unpleasant job was a brick in the foundation of something bigger, something they couldn't possibly imagine. He started studying business at night, taking online courses after long days on the job. He read books on scaling a company, on management, on finance. He was still the same hardworking plumber on the outside, but on the inside, he was transforming, strategizing, planning his silent ascent. Sarah saw the change, the quiet intensity in his eyes, but even she didn't fully grasp the scale of what was happening beneath the surface. His in-laws, of course, saw nothing at all. They were too busy looking down. Then came the moment. The kind of opportunity that feels like a sheer cliff face, terrifying to climb, but with the promise of an incredible view from the top. It was a Tuesday evening. Jason was finishing up a routine drain cleaning when his phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him. "Jason?" "Jason Riley." The voice on the other end was gruff, hurried. "Name's Frank Kowalski. I'm a contractor over on the new Blackwood development." Jason's ears perked up. The Blackwood development was the biggest housing project the town had seen in decades, hundreds of houses going up. "Yeah, this is Jason," he replied, a flicker of curiosity igniting. "Listen, our plumbing guy, he just bailed. Walked off the job yesterday. We're on a tight deadline, got dozens of houses waiting on rough-in plumbing." Frank paused, then got straight to the point. "It's a huge project. We need someone reliable, someone who can scale up fast." "You in?" Jason's mind raced. This wasn't a leaky faucet or a clogged toilet. This was massive. It would require more than just him and his truck. He'd need a crew, more equipment, capital. It was a terrifying risk. He'd have to hire people he trusted, and fast. He'd need to invest in new tools, new vehicles. He'd likely have to max out his credit, maybe even take out a loan. The thought sent a jolt of fear through him. If this failed, he could lose everything he'd built. But then he thought of Sunday dinners. He thought of Judith's wrinkled nose and Brad's smug jokes. He thought of all the times he'd swallowed his pride and just smiled. He thought of the storm brewing inside him. Yes, Jason said, the word coming out stronger than he expected. I'm in. That single yes changed everything. The next few months were a whirlwind of relentless work. Jason hired 2 guys he knew from the trade school, young, hungry, and eager to learn. He leased a couple of vans, invested in commercial-grade equipment. He was on site from sunup to sundown, not just plumbing, but managing, problem-solving, coordinating. He pushed himself and his small crew to their limits, ensuring every job was done right, on time, and to the highest standard. That first big job led to another contract, and then another. Contractors saw his work ethic, his reliability, his commitment to quality, and they wanted more. Within 18 months, Jason's world was unrecognizable. He went from being a solo plumber working in people's bathrooms and basements to overseeing plumbing installation on entire construction sites. He formalized his business, giving it a name: Blue Line Plumbing and Infrastructure. The name sounded solid, dependable, like a vital utility. He made a conscious decision to hire veterans, recognizing their discipline and work ethic. He also sought out young men who were struggling, who hadn't been given a fair shot, and he trained them, teaching them a valuable trade and giving them a sense of purpose. By year 3, Blue Line Plumbing and Infrastructure wasn't just a small business, it was a force to be reckoned with. Jason had 22 employees on his payroll. He had secured major contracts with the city. And his annual revenue? It wasn't just 6 figures anymore. He was clearing 7 figures annually. Jason Riley, the plumber they dismissed, was a millionaire. He bought a new house, a beautiful one, but not ostentatious. He upgraded his truck, the old pickup finally retired after years of loyal service. He even started giving talks at local trade schools, sharing his story and talking about the dignity of skilled labor, about how building things with your hands was something to be proud of, not ashamed of. But through it all, he never bragged to Sarah's family. He never flaunted his success at Sunday dinner. They didn't ask about his work beyond the perfunctory, slightly condescending questions they always asked. They just assumed he was still the plumber, the one who fixed toilets and probably smelled faintly of drains. They were so busy looking down, they never bothered to look up and see how high he had climbed. And Jason let them. He just kept smiling that quiet smile, the one that now held a hint of something they couldn't quite decipher. Life has a funny way of delivering lessons, doesn't it? Sometimes they come gently, like a soft rain. And sometimes they come like a flood. A brutal storm hit the town. Not just a heavy rain, but a relentless downpour that lasted for days. The kind of storm that overwhelms drainage systems, pushes rivers over their banks, and finds every single weakness in a building's foundation. Pipes burst underground. Basements became swimming pools. Storm drains backed up, sending foul water surging into homes. It was a disaster. And amidst the chaos, dozens of homeowners discovered that their insurance policies, the ones they'd paid for faithfully for years, had clauses that excluded flood damage or damage from sewage backups. They were on their own. Among those whose homes were devastated were Judith and Brad. Jason didn't hear about it from them. Of course not. He heard about it from Sarah, her voice tight with worry on the phone. Jason, you won't believe it. Mom's house, it's wrecked. The basement is completely flooded, and there's water damage everywhere. And Brad's house too. His basement is just as bad. They don't know what to do. Sarah sounded genuinely distressed, worried about her family. Jason listened quietly, a complex mix of emotions churning inside him. On the one hand, he would never wish hardship on anyone, least of all Sarah's family. On the other hand, the irony was thick enough to swim in. He nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see him. That's tough, he said, choosing his words carefully. They've called everyone, Jason, Sarah continued, her voice a little frantic. All the local plumbing companies are swamped, completely booked for weeks. And the estimates they are getting are astronomical. Mom was crying. A beat of silence. Jason took a slow breath. Tell them, he said, his voice low and even, tell them I'm busy. He wasn't. Not entirely. Blue Line Plumbing and Infrastructure was slammed, of course, dealing with the aftermath of the storm. But Jason, as the owner, could have easily shuffled things around, sent a crew to his in-laws' houses. He had the resources. But he hesitated. They had spent nearly a decade looking down on him, mocking his profession, implying he wasn't good enough. They had dismissed the very skills that were now in desperate demand, the skills that could save their homes. They had belittled the hand that now, in a twist of fate almost too poetic to believe, held their lifeline. And he wasn't sure he was ready to offer it just yet. He wanted them to feel it, just for a moment. The desperation, the helplessness, the realization that the person they scorned was the one person who could help. A day passed. Then another. Judith and Brad were getting nowhere. Their houses were getting worse, the water damage spreading, the smell of mildew growing stronger. The city's emergency services were overwhelmed. And every plumbing company they called was either booked solid or quoting prices that were simply impossible for them to afford, especially with insurance denying their claims. Finally, Brad called. His voice, usually so confident and condescending, sounded strained, almost pleading. Hey, Jason, he started, clearing his throat awkwardly. Listen, man. I know, we haven't always seen eye to eye. Jason waited, saying nothing. But, well, we're in a real bind here. Mom's house, my house. It's bad. Really bad. Brad's voice was losing its bravado, cracking slightly. We need help. Another pause. The line was silent except for the faint static. The city emergency line, Brad continued, his desperation palpable. They gave us a list of commercial contractors who might be able to handle large-scale water damage and pipe repair. Your company, Blue Line Plumbing, they said you're the best. The only ones who could probably handle this right now. Jason didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. He let the silence hang in the air, heavy with unspoken history. He thought of the wedding day whispers, the Sunday dinner jabs, the wrinkled noses, the constant, low-level disrespect. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. Yeah, Brad, Jason finally said, his voice calm, professional. I might be able to help. Jason arrived the next day, not in his old pickup truck, but in a clean, logo-emblazoned Blue Line Plumbing and Infrastructure van, a crew of 6 capable-looking men in matching uniforms following in 2 more vans. They pulled up to Judith's house first. The front yard was a mess, debris scattered everywhere. Judith opened the door before he even reached it. She looked different. Older than her years, her face etched with worry and exhaustion. The usual sharp, critical look in her eyes was replaced with something that looked a lot like defeat. The air heavy and damp, carrying the unmistakable, sickening smell of mildew and stagnant water. She didn't say hello. She didn't offer an apology or an explanation. She just stared at Jason for a moment, at the professional crew behind him, at the clean, modern vans with his company's name on them. Then, silently, she stepped aside, opening the door wider. Jason walked in, his crew fanning out behind him, their faces grim and professional. He walked through the living room, the dining room, the kitchen. He could see the waterline on the walls, the buckling floorboards, the despair in every corner. Then he went to the basement steps and shone a powerful flashlight down. It wasn't just wet, it was a swamp. He walked through every room, quiet and methodical. He didn't make small talk. He didn't ask about the extent of the damage, it was obvious. He simply observed, his eyes scanning for structural issues, for the source of the most significant problems. He took notes on a tablet, his face unreadable. He was all business. The plumber. Judith followed him, wringing her hands, her usual imperious demeanor completely gone. When he finished his inspection, he turned to her. "Okay," Jason said, his voice calm and professional, devoid of any triumph or malice. "Here's what needs to happen. We'll need to pump out the basement, assess the pipe damage, likely replace a significant section of the main line. We'll need to bring in industrial dehumidifiers and air scrubbers to mitigate the mold risk. The drywall in the basement will need to be removed up to the water line, treated, and replaced. The flooring will need to be pulled up and replaced. There's also some electrical work that will need to be inspected due to water exposure." He paused, looking directly at Judith. "All in," he stated clearly, "this will cost about $42,000. Judith's eyes, already wide with worry, seemed to bulge out of her head. Her face went pale. $42,000, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But we can't afford that. The insurance, they denied the claim." It was the moment. The moment he could have twisted the knife, could have reminded her of every insult, every dismissal. He could have quoted her an even higher price, knowing she was desperate. He could have walked away and left her to deal with the mess she had indirectly helped create with her years of scorn. But he didn't. Instead, Jason reached into the folder he was carrying and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He handed it to Judith. It was an invoice from Blue Line Plumbing and Infrastructure. But at the bottom, in the section marked Amount Due, it read $0. And stamped across the middle were the words, "Paid in full." Judith stared at the paper, her eyes scanning the details, then fixing on the 0 at the bottom. She looked up at Jason, completely bewildered. "You don't have to worry about it," Jason said, his voice gentle. It's already taken care of." He paused, then added, "Consider it a courtesy. From one family member to another." A choked sound escaped Judith's throat. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. The carefully constructed facade of the proud, critical matriarch crumbled. She looked at this man, the man she had so consistently underestimated and belittled, the man whose profession she had deemed beneath her family, and he was saving her home. "Jason," she whispered, the words thick with emotion, I misjudged you." He didn't say anything in response. There was nothing to say. The invoice said it all. His success said it all. His actions in this moment said it all. He simply nodded, a small, acknowledging nod. He gave his crew instructions, his professional demeanor firmly back in place. As he turned to leave, to head over to Brad's equally damaged house, he paused at the door. He looked back at Judith, who was still clutching the invoice, tears streaming down her face. "Next time," Jason said, his voice quiet but clear, the hint of that knowing smile returning. "Next time you meet a plumber, remember this day." He didn't stay to see her reaction. He had work to do. Important work. The work of a plumber. They say success is the best revenge. And sometimes that's true. Jason's success was undeniably a powerful response to the way he'd been treated. He didn't need to say a word. His multi-million-dollar company spoke volumes. But in this story, the real power, the deepest impact, wasn't in the success itself, but in how he chose to wield it. He didn't need to humiliate Judith and Brad. Life, and that brutal storm, had already done that. Their pride had collapsed along with their basements. By choosing grace over bitterness, by offering help instead of turning his back, Jason didn't just fix a broken home. He restored something deeper, something more profound. Dignity. His own, by refusing to let their opinion define him, and, in a strange way, theirs too, by offering them a way out of their crisis without demanding groveling or apologies. It's a powerful reminder. The next time someone looks down on you, dismisses you, makes you feel small because of who you are or what you do, let them. Let them stay up there on their high horse in their limited view of the world. Because one day, when they least expect it, they might just find themselves in a situation where they need to look up. Way up. Just to meet your eyes. I'm Ruby, and this was your daily dose of karma served warm, with a wrench in hand. If you love the story of grit, resilience, respect, and a little bit of poetic justice, make sure you hit that like button. Every like tells me you want more stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on that bell icon so you never miss a single tale, because here on Revenge Ruby, we bring you stories that prove every underdog truly has their day. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, keep building your dreams, and please, for their sake, never underestimate a plumber.